Start over again?
Right, yeah, just go ahead.
April 15th, 2024, I'm with John Jeckovich, World War II veteran.
420965. 420965.
Jen set up this beautiful setup here. We'll be soon beaming his message across the world on a nightly basis, 5 days a week. And we're to pick up this story from his book called Their Mother's Son, written in 2003. And we're to pick up at chapter 6 this time, and then it'll be Home on Furlough, Farewell to Anne. I recollected how I walked down the same alley in what seemed another lifetime, but in reality was only a few short months ago. Nothing had changed but me, and in my desperation to overtake my change, I had failed to completely realization of my failure was brought home to me, most vividly in the stark reality of my returning home. There was no one home. I suspected Mother would be working and Sally was around somewhere in the vicinity. The back door was locked and the key was still to be found in the milk box beside the door. I unlocked the door and entered the small hallway which led up to 3 stairs to the back door of the kitchen. I opened the basement door and peered down the stairway, but did not go down. Instead, I reached for the key to the kitchen, which was above the trim molding of the door. Unlocked the door and entered the kitchen. Do you remember that clearly, how you got in there?
Yeah.
You remembered all the spots where the keys were hidden, right?
Yeah.
Standing in the middle of the kitchen, I was dismayed at the thought that I once lived here. Why did you think you'd like to live there?
Well, it looks smaller and antique.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's dated and small.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I once lived here. In a few short months, I had completely disassociated myself from the emotional attachment I once had felt here. I was thoroughly alienated from every aspect on it and knew this was no longer or would never again be my home. I felt utter repugnance as I walked through the house. The revulsion was not much directed at the physical appearance of the surroundings, but more at the emotional sensitivity it triggered off in me. Here in the living room, where the most of the bickering and fighting took place. So you remembered all the bickering and fighting?
Yeah.
Then the physical blows as well as the emotional skirmishes. The silence that was endured in here when no one would speak to another for weeks, and only to be broken by the more discord and antagonism. So your mom wouldn't speak for weeks.
Yeah.
And it's just made your father crazy, right?
Yeah.
And did he talk, or did he try to get the conversation going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they ate separately too. Stevie and my father ate first.
Okay. Oh, wow. The kitchen where we would take turns eating, never as a family group, but as a select factions paired out to emotional affiliation and submissiveness. It was here that I would attempt to calm and the coolness of various warning factions into the family unit through my humble and docile undertaking at cooking and baking. Nevertheless, to say that would always fail, but I would keep on trying. So you try to smooth things out and it didn't work.
What's that?
When everyone was fighting, you try to smooth things out at your house,
Yeah.
but it didn't work.
Oh.
As I walked into the modest bedrooms, first my mother's and then ours, I noted that nothing had really changed. It was here in our bedroom that we would all huddle in desperation, seeking solace and protection for the night, hoping that our sleep would not be broken by some onslaught of conflict. Onslaught of conflict.
Conscience? Oh.
Onslaught of conflict. I would never associate my mother's bedroom as my mother's bedroom. It was always my father's bedroom, as he occupied it solely himself.
You know, surprisingly, my mother and us and the kids slept in the Packard in the garage.
Yeah, you told me when health broke
Yeah.
loose,
Yeah.
you and your mother would go in the Packard. But no other kids, right?
Well, no, Stevie was away. Rookie was wandering around.
Just you and your mother.
Sally was with us.
Just you and your mother, right?
Yeah.
But how would you sleep, in the front seat or the back seat?
Back seat.
That was a big Packard.
Yeah.
That was like a couch. It was like, okay.
Boy, you're talking. It was November, December out.
Yeah, it was at
cold.
Was that in the
There was
garage?
heat in the garage.
But the garage was detached from the house, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where did everyone think you guys were?
They didn't care.
As I recalled, I would never enter it, even when he was not home, but avoided it as some privileged sanctuary for my father alone. Here in the house was the secret, still unlocked, of why I could not release myself from its bondage and make my life with Anne. It seemed strange to say that the name of Anne here, as it should never be mentioned, and as if it did not exist. See, my father just updated me. You know, the garage was detached from the house.
Yeah.
And he would always try to put out fires with people screaming and yelling. And so what my father and his mother would do is they'd go in the Packard and sleep in the Packard.
Oh,
And they didn't turn the heat on either.
November, December.
oh my God.
He says there was always bickering.
Wow.
Then my mother and father wouldn't talk to each other for weeks.
That was a lot of pressure. I went down. I did not want Anne to be part of this, to feel the pain and the dejection and a subtle deception. I want a new beginning, and I hope in time our love would overcome my feelings of despair and despondency. I went down the cellar stairs, and strangely, the thought of the basement and the furnace as being my only friends in the house eluded me.
You see that writing all over the furnace?
Yeah, you had the initials over the furnace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. It's still
Wrote there,
there.
poker, red hot poker.
Yeah. It was only when I saw my initials burned into one of the rafters above the furnace that I thought I'd return to me. I had not thought of the basement and the furnace for the longest time, and as a matter of fact, I looked upon it now as some frivolous, childish preoccupation. Those initials are still there.
What?
Those above the furnace, those initials that you carved in there with that hot poker are still
and
there.
there was 10 ton of pico in the coal shed.
I looked at the basement once again, and the fervor was gone. There was nothing I wanted down here. I did check the furnace and see how it had come along the previous winter. There were dried up ashes in the grates, as the ash pit was almost full. Despondently, I walked upstairs and wondered how I was going to get through the next 12 days. I seriously thought of telling my mother and Sally that I was home for a week and then go back to camp early. I thought at that time that was an excellent idea. I would not commit myself to a positive date until I had been here for several days. Jen, you want to help her in?
Couldn't wait to get out. Get back.
Behind the fence, Jen.
Come around.
Go help her, Jen. She doesn't know where she's going. Maybe she could sit somewhere. Bring her in here. Take her hand and bring her in here.
Hey, sweetie, come on in.
Help her, take her
Was he
hand.
got a cat down?
No, you're fine. Don't move, John.
Audience. Audience.
Come around, watch this.
Take her hand now, a lot of wires.
There's no wires over here, Dave. Come around.
Pull that chair back for her right there.
No, you're fine.
All right.
Pull that chair
You're
back.
fine, John. Don't move.
All right.
Hey, Claire.
Howdy.
Come on in.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right there, Claire. We like your company.
Yeah.
Yeah. You give us all the points.
Claire, we're on chapter 6, and this is when my dad is going home
On furlough.
for furlough.
Okay.
And he was debating about going to see his girlfriend in Owensboro or going to see his mother and sister, and he ended up going to see his mother and sister. And so that's where he was, and he says, boy, everything looks so different. It looks small and archaic, and
Yeah.
it doesn't look how I remembered it.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like kicking himself saying, why didn't I just go to Owensboro and be with Ann instead of coming here? So he didn't tell his mother and sister coming yet, but I'm getting to that point right now. If he's gonna surprise him that he's there, but the surprise doesn't really work out too good, because what happens, Dad, when you had some orange juice?
I went in the refrigerator and got some orange juice, and my mother got home and she said, who drank that damn orange juice?
Well, during the war, you couldn't get it.
Yeah.
That wasn't a
I was on a
happy.
train all afternoon. I was thirsty.
So that's what happened, but I'm going to read a little bit more about it. Again, I walked through the house. All my unconscious emotions were let loose in despair and anguish. Yes, here was the reason I'd come back, alone and delirious thoughts, not wishing to share them again with someone I've known and loved. I did not want Ann to be a part of this. To feel the pain and the dejection of subtle deception. I want a new beginning, and I hope in time our love would overcome my feelings. Let me tell you. Amber, I'm reading a book to my dad. I'll call you back. Okay. I went down the cellar stairs and strangely thought of the basement and furnace as being my only friend. So when my dad lived there before the service, he had a service go in the basement and service the furnace. And that's when he had a service the furnace, because none of his other brothers would do nothing. So he went down there, and the furnace as being my only friend in the house eluded me. It was only when I saw my initials burned into one of the rafters above the furnace that the thought returned to me. So my dad took a hot poker from the furnace, and in the wood above he put his initials. I had not thought of the basement and furnace for a long time. As a matter of fact, I looked upon it now as some frivolous, childish preoccupation. I looked about the basement, and once again the fervor was gone. There was nothing I wanted down here. I did check to see how the furnace was doing come through the previous winter. They were dried up ashes in the grates, and the ash pits were almost full. See, that was my job. My dad kept everything clean. When he was gone, it just overwhelmed me.
Got away from everybody. That was Amendola. Amendola was downstairs. He took
Despondently,
the shovel out of the ash bin, throw it on the floor.
Despondently, I walked back upstairs and wondered how I was going to get through the next 12 days. He just got there now. I seriously thought of telling Mother and Sally that I was home only for a week and going back to camp early. I thought at that time this was an excellent idea. I would commit myself to a positive date and to I had been here for several days. I felt better as I developed the plan of shortened furlough. So he was thinking this wasn't working out too good, so he should tell him only a week and then head out of there. But he didn't do it. He stayed to the bitter end.
Yeah.
It would help relieve some of the discomfort that I had caused for Ann. That's his girlfriend. I would have a longer time with Ann, what I wanted to do all along. A feeling of joy overtook me in the belief that I had solved part of my immediate problem. It was all about the precise moment that my sister, that's his younger sister, walked into the kitchen. She mistook the joy and happiness she saw in my face for a display of affection on seeing her once again. I hugged her and remarked that she had gotten taller and older looking. She replied that I looked great and I appeared different. I laughingly told her that it was a uniform, so he's still wearing the Army uniform. We talked a while, and I asked her when Mother got off of work. She said at 16:30 hours, and that she usually got a ride from a co-worker. I asked if I should meet her with the car, but Sally informed me that they did not have a car. So when he was gone, they sold the car, the Packard.
Yeah.
It was a big Packard. And when my father, his father's dead by now because he died in his 40s. But his father didn't drive, but he loved to get a big Packard, so he had a Packard, right?
Yeah. He drove it a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and then what happened, my father was the one that took care of his mother, and the Packard was in the garage. When they were bickering back and forth and the silent treatment amongst them, my father and my mother would go sleep in the Packard overnight. Yeah. Yeah, and he said no one missed him. Okay, so that's that update. Let me see. Sally told me that she had promised a friend. Okay. Sally informed me that she does not have a car. They sold it. Sally then told me she had promised a friend that she would be at their house to visit and plan some future events for school. I told her by all means go. So she just met her sister, Sally, but Sally is now saying I gotta go, real quickly.
Yeah, she was hooked up with Mary Taylor.
I would sit around and wait for Mother. As she quickly made a dash for the kitchen door, she turned abruptly and said that she was glad I was home and she missed me. That was good. I smiled at her and she left the kitchen and closed the door. I thought how nothing had changed. A few months ago, I would have experienced this same attitude and not thought nothing of it. Now I had envisioned a totally different perspective of myself, and experience I had just received only reinforced the reality. I then decided I would cut my forlorn short and join Ann for the remainder of it. I went over the timing of it and came to the conclusion that I would leave here on Sunday and arrive in Owensville on Tuesday. Did you hear that, Jim?
Yeah.
I had to confirm train reservations, and I would do the first thing tomorrow morning. I would also call Ann and tell her the good news. That presented a problem. I did not want to call from here, and I did not have a car. I would work something out. I also concluded, even though I made this intention long ago, not to say anything to my mother and sister about going overseas, most certainly not to mention to Ann. I felt good that I had finally done something constructive as far as Ann and I were concerned. I then realized that I was decidedly hungry and I have not eaten all day. It seems strange peering in a refrigerator as I have not done so in months. So after the end of the war, it feels so strange looking in a refrigerator because you haven't seen a refrigerator in a long time. I found some meatloaf wrapped in foil, made myself a sandwich and a half a glass of milk. As I was cleaning up eating, I heard the car door slam shut out front. It was Mother. She was surprised to see me and wanted to know how long I'd been here. She hugged and kissed me on the cheek, and she said I looked different in my uniform. So that's the first time your mother's seen you in your uniform, right?
Yeah.
That was the first time. She asked me how long I was staying, and I replied I'll have to leave early Sunday. She did not appear disappointed at the news, but only said that she was working all week and she would give me a list of things to do around the house.
Oh, yeah.
She would give, you haven't been there for 5 minutes. And she says she has to work all week, so she's going to make up a list
Yeah.
of things. Like
Wallpaper, various this, cut this
the
down.
house while no one was home during the day. So how big was this list she gave you?
You know those little notebooks?
Yeah?
Every light was full. Well, nothing was done in the house.
Instead of saying, hey, son, relax. Here's your list, boy.
Yeah.
As I was cleaning, okay. She also mentioned that Steve, that's her older brother, was stationed at Fort Belvoir in North Carolina, and he had been home several times. He had visited with Jimmy Duncan, Ralph Ingstrom, and the former scoutmaster, Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, he didn't do anything in the house.
No. Steve and Lookie are his brothers. Steve's the older one, Lookie's the younger one. Lookie said he was still at the Coast Guard station in California and hadn't been home at all. Yeah. She then opened up the refrigerator, that's his mother, and remarked that someone had taken part of the meatloaf. Oh my God, the hell you've been through there. She said someone took in part of the meatloaf. I quickly stated that I had. She seemed peeved. So, John, you hearing this? She seemed peeved and walked into the living room knowing that I had made the right decision. Now I knew I made the right decision of leaving early. It was all starting all over again. And once again, in the midst of it all, I was thankful that my brothers were not home. So you made yourself a sandwich.
Yeah.
Your mother said someone ate this meatloaf.
Yeah.
And you said I had a sandwich and she got pissed.
Yeah.
And then she went in the living room.
Plus the orange juice.
And now you knew you made the right decision by leaving early.
No, you're talking about depression area. That was depression that time.
I know, but
No.
still, she hasn't seen you and you're in the Army. I could hear Mother. Oh, she thankful that my brother. So you're thankful that your two brothers weren't there, right?
No.
I did not know what to do with myself. I felt so alienated, so out of touch with everything. I'd been home only a few short time, and within 5 minutes of seeing my mother, I had managed to aggravate her. Oh my God. You hearing this, Jen?
Yeah.
I walked to the front window and looked out, hoping that I would see something out there to distract me from my frustrating thoughts. I could hear Mother rattling the dishes and pots in the kitchen, and I certainly knew what that meant. So was she just like shake them around or something?
Yeah. Well, she's ready to cook
But she
supper.
you said she was rattling them.
Huh?
So you said that meant she was angry. If she was rattling the pots, then you said that meant she was angry.
She's angry?
Okay, there was nothing, let's see.
Well, yeah, sometimes she does that,
She
yeah.
was angry. I did not go into the kitchen, but instead I went out the front door, down the porch steps, and around the side of the house. I walked to the garage, which was behind the house, and slid the door open. There was nothing of significance in the garage. No car, just some things I placed around and outside the wall before I left. A lawnmower rusting out, a wheelbarrow, some garden tools, an assortment of cardboard boxes that become mildewed, resting on the garage floor, and an old red wagon which used to carry vegetables from the city market. It all looked forlorn. I had been accustomed to the neatness and preventive maintenance in the Army, and the sight of all this glaringly manifested itself. I stood in the middle of the garage, not knowing what to do next. The only thing I could think of several times that we slept in the Packard, parked in the garage, and how I felt going to school the next morning. I told myself that this nonsense, bringing up all these ridiculous memories, I closed the garage door and went back into the house. Sally was back home and was talking to mother in the bedroom. I went into the living room and sat down, feeling that I wanted a hot shower and a change of clothes. A short while later, Sally came into the room and sat down in a chair opposite me. She stated that after we had a little something to eat and Mother were going to the movies. So your first day back, your sister, your younger sister, and your mother were going to the movies.
Well, they collected those dishes. Every Tuesday you went to the movies, you got a dish.
Oh, there was a dish collection.
Yeah.
Why didn't you go to the movies with them?
Huh?
Why didn't you go to the movies with
I
them?
don't know. I probably wasn't invited.
God. This is crazy.
Well, too, it might have been a lovey-dovey movie.
Lovey-dovey movie, yeah. She further reiterated that Mother was collecting a dish set, just like you said, that the theater was giving out one a week, and that she did not want to miss that particular piece.
Yeah.
Okay, you hit it nail on the head, Jim.
Yeah.
I said that was fine. I would do the dishes if they were running late. We sat at kitchen table and ate remainder of the meatloaf, some mashed potatoes and green beans. Mother said that she would have fixed something better if she'd known that I was coming, but since she worked all day, that was the best she could do. I smiled and said that was delicious, and it was suited me fine. Minutes later, they were out the door in a rush. The movie would start in a half an hour, and they had to walk to the theater. After they had left, I did separate dishes and tidied up the kitchen. Also found some of my old civilian clothes, and before I changed into them, took a cold bath. I did not think it would be appropriate to fire up the small stove that heated the water. Why'd you have to take a cold bath?
No, she didn't want to heat the water. The water was that little stove at the foot of the cellar, at the foot of the stairs to the
Okay.
cellar.
Besides, I did not think that was any cut up dry wood. So in order to take a hot bath, you'd have to burn wood?
No, what I did, I went to Hyde Park and got showers there.
So you went to a public shower.
Yeah,
But how'd your mother and your sister take a hot bath?
they probably in the bathtub.
Okay.
No, they heated the water up with that stove and dumped it in
Okay.
the
Okay. While I was in the basement, I noticed the wood pile was down considerably. That would probably be my first chore. I thought about the days I had left before returning to Owensboro, how I filled the time. Surely when Mother would have enough for me to do around the house. I was also giving some thoughts as how and where I would contact Ann. It would have to be after 2100 hours. Things were simpler at camp, so the life was simpler at camp than there, you're saying. You
Right.
said things were simpler at camp. So things were simpler being at camp than being home.
yeah, the home was confusing as hell. Yeah.
I did not have to plan or micromanage each deliberate move as I was doing now. I felt its activity or function I made was being evaluated and acted upon, that I was being constantly scrutinized. That's amazing. I sat in the living room for the longest time. I did not even turn on the radio. Did you have a TV?
There was no TV then.
Just a radio, no TV
Just that
then?
radio.
No TVs.
Okay.
Table radio, yeah.
Radio, yeah. And I listened to subtle noises that the house made. The whirling of the refrigerator fan motor reminded me of my thoughts, gyrating at the spinning about in my head. Thoughts such as why I had come back here at all. I was only a short period of 7 months ago. I was hesitant and forlorn about leaving. My feelings manifested themselves in a quick change I made into my civilian clothes. It seemed that I was caught in the middle of two separate persons, both vying to overpower me in their orbit of rationalization.
Big choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not as if I was helpless in my frustrations, but I had a deep sense of guilt as feelings of desperation. Guilt that I was directly responsible for my mother and sister's present condition. So he felt like he had to stay there to take care of his mother and sister.
Well, my mother wasn't sick.
She wasn't sick at all, no.
She was healthy for
She was
89
very
years
strong.
old. She
Very
wasn't sick
strong.
at all.
It was after all, I was the only one accountable. Oh, it was after all, who was accountable for my father's death, as my mother reiterated to me many times. This is such a wrong thing. Her father was a young man in his early 40s, his father. And he's an immigrant, and he broke his back like all immigrants did. Not like now. Not like now. And so he'd be making cement, which is very, very hard work.
Yes.
And he died of a heart attack, and right on the spot he ended up in the cement. And his mother kept telling him that it was his fault because he
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
working with him that day.
I was doing my homework or something, yeah.
He had to do it so, and so that was wearing heavy on him. And to show you how things were different then, here's a man, an immigrant, trying to make his way. There was no handouts then. Now these guys today got charge cards and cell phones and hotels.
Well, no, Stevie got the handout. He got Cornell.
I know, but
And
he wasn't
he never stayed home. He never had the apartment at home. Look, he was
But
learning
I'm
to
just
rail all
saying
the
that
time.
immigrants worked hard back then compared to what we have today. They were.
The only one who was involved was me. I
Yeah.
lived there day to day, every
So
day.
anyways, he had to do his homework, and at the same time his father died, which is no reflection on the son. The kid's only 16 years old. And so the police came to the door and said, "Are you the son?" And my father says, "Yeah." They go, "Come with me." And so they took him down to the morgue, and his father was in the morgue, full of cement, He goes, is that your father? A 15-year-old boy. Is that your father? He goes,